Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for this critical study on anti-Semitism. My name is Nati Pressman. I'm a first-generation Canadian Jew in my third year at Queen's University. I'm the first person in my family to be born in a country where I'm given the same rights as other citizens, despite the fact that I am Jewish. I've always been grateful for the opportunities and peace that Canada has given me and my family. However, that peace has been blemished by anti-Semitism.
That's what it sounded like on Parliament Hill when the founder of the Canadian Union of Jewish Students testified before lawmakers at the House of Commons Committee on Justice and Human Rights, studying anti-Semitism. On May 9th, Nati Pressman joined other Jewish students to report on their experiences of anti-Semitism on university campuses since October 7th, including mezuzahs being torn off doors at a residence at Queen's University, about their friends who wear kippot, afraid to walk on campus now without a baseball cap to cover them up, about a professor who told student Zionists aren't welcome in their class, and the intimidation they feel from the tent encampments, like this masked protester wearing a keffiyeh at the University of Toronto.
Well, hell, Hitler, he's a G. He's a gangster. I wish you made it all you guys, bro. And the world would have been a better place. If you guys were gone, the world would have been a better place. You guys would run the whole world. Just Jews run the world.
As all this is happening, the Canadian Union of Jewish Students is taking shape. It's a new group, just a few weeks old, with 330 members across 20 campuses. It's an offshoot of the larger World Union of Jewish Students, part of the World Jewish Congress, financially supported by the Jewish Agency for Israel. Joining is free. For now, the group doesn't have any space on campuses. It's mostly online, although many of the founders are deeply involved already with existing groups like Hillel, the Startup Nation, and Chabad. Some have interned with CJPAC and Honest Reporting. The CUJS says it doesn't want to replace these other groups, but feels it's time for a national group representing Jewish students to have a seat at the table, especially as university administrators are negotiating with protest leaders about potential changes to campus culture and financial investments.
And so we are making it very, very apparent that what's going on with the encampments is crossing several lines. It's not even the debate at this point about specifically hate speech, although of course that is a part of it. It's a bigger conversation about free speech on campus and who is being sidelined and the atmosphere that's being created.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Wednesday, May 29th, 2024. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News.
I can't date women right now because I'm too busy calling myself a piece of shit.
I had a dysfunctional Jewish mother and I had a dysfunctional Native mother.
I had 25 full years of utter struggle and failure.
I started to realize the absurdity of my inability to let go of this monster of guilt.
Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Hi, I'm Ralph Benrig. I'm the host of Not That Kind of Rabbi, where we look at people's spiritual journeys and take a little time for their self-reflection, and maybe yours. You can get it all at the cjn.ca/NTKR or wherever you get your podcasts.
While legal action to evict the McGill encampment has so far failed, and the University of Toronto is currently before the courts to try to do the same thing to force their large encampment to shut down, several other schools like the University of Ontario in Oshawa and McMaster in Hamilton have settled with their protesters and agreed to some of their demands. For its part, the University of Manitoba pledged to make anti-Semitism training mandatory at its med school after a valedictorian excoriated Israel during her pro-Palestinian speech at graduation. Just a few days after the House of Commons Committee heard from the students, they also heard from the presidents of 4 Canadian universities, all admitting there is a significant anti-Semitism problem on their campuses, and that it's in clear violation of all their official codes of conduct and policies about anti-racism, which is something the Canadian Union of Jewish Students has been closely documenting as it prepares further reports to give to federal leaders. To find out what the Union of Jewish Students is doing about these encampments and what it was like testifying on Parliament Hill, I'm joined now by the founder, Nati Pressman, and 4 of her colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Can you just sort of introduce yourself quickly in 2 seconds? Tell us your role and what school, and then we'll move to everybody around.
So I'm Nati. I just finished my third year at Queen's University, and I'm the founder of CUJS.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I just graduated from Carleton University, and I'm a member helping develop some of the infrastructure.
Hi, I'm Miranda. I'm a third year at SFU in British Columbia, and I'm one of the first people to join CUJS.
Okay, last two but not least.
Hi, my name's Haley Kapinski, and I just finished my third year at McMaster University in Hamilton, but I'm originally from Toronto.
I'm Jacqueline Sneidman-Stren, and I just finished my first year of university at Concordia University in Montreal, Quebec, and I am from Toronto, Ontario.
Well, it's great to have you all. All right, who lives and works and studies at the worst university for Jewish students? I think probably Concordia is pretty bad.
Yeah, Concordia is pretty bad. There's been a lot of protests inside my school building specifically.
We better go back to the beginning and just tell our listeners a little bit about how this got off the ground.
Yeah, so it was actually almost 2 years ago when I had the idea for CUJS, a long time. I realized that it was insane that Canada did not have their own Jewish student union. We're the fourth largest Jewish community in the world, third largest in the diaspora, and for us to not actually have that space on the global stage where other Jewish students have that opportunity globally made me really sad. So I thought, I really want to start a Canadian one. And I had a really detailed plan, and it was taking 2 years because I was doing things behind the scenes. And so after October 7th, I realized that I needed to abandon my really carefully created plan and just go straight into becoming a student union, because I thought it would be a disservice for me to wait any longer. And I have absolutely no regrets. And then from there, we started as a WhatsApp group, then we started committees, then we've written constitutions, we've done campaigns. And as you can see, we had a press conference on Parliament Hill, and I was able to testify on behalf of CUJS to the Committee for Justice and Human Rights.
Okay, well, you called out Miranda's name, so let me ask you, what motivated you to do this? And if I remember correctly, wasn't SFU the one where they were trying to get rid of Hillel? Or was that UBC?
UBC, there was a push for that briefly, but the student union there, the alma mater society, shut down that initiative.
Haley, you were nodding, so let me bring you in. What motivated you to join?
For sure. So just to echo what Miranda said, I completely agree that students need to be at the forefront of the fight against anti-Semitism, especially in the political space. There are so many amazing organizations who do this important work, but we all believe that Jewish students who witness these anti-Semitic incidences on campus firsthand need to be advising these political leaders and making our voices heard.
What have you lived through the last few months or before?
For sure. So as I mentioned, I'm at McMaster University, and I'm very involved with the Hillel on campus. I'm actually one of the incoming co-presidents. A personal anecdote is that at a vigil that my Hillel set up to honor the hostages, I was told that I wasn't a real Jew by counter-protesters. And I think that many people who work for other organizations or even politicians don't realize how common these incidences are to Jewish students on campus. I think everyone I know has a story like this or something similar, and it's so important to make this known and have our voices be at the forefront of decision-making when it pertains specifically to us.
I haven't talked to you, Lindsay. You were at Carleton, so what does this mean to you to be involved in something like this?
The fact that it's nationwide makes it unique. The fact that it engages directly in political advocacy makes it unique. And particularly right now with the encampments, it's very, very important for our data tracking and trend monitoring that we see what's happening across Canada so we can articulate it clearly to elected officials, to campus administration, and to the media.
Talk to me about the encampments, because the encampments are mostly still up. Alberta is not. UQAM might come down. McGill still had their injunction disallowed or whatever for now. What are you doing about this to either lobby or support the students who are feeling these encampments are not making them safe?
Yeah, so I've been particularly knees deep in the encampment scene. So I've read the code of conduct for every school that has an encampment, and the encampments are against every single one of them. So at this point, we're waiting for the schools to act. We have so far sent letters to some schools flagging for them particular dangers that may be occurring on their campus and the atmosphere that they are creating. Ultimately, we're also, like Nati said, this is a discussion that's going on at the House of Commons right now. There are some members also submitting briefs to the Justice and Human Rights Committee. And so we are making it very, very apparent that what's going on with the encampments is crossing several lines. So part of what we're doing is also data collection on the encampments. We are collecting pictures and videos from what is happening across the country, and we're trying to streamline that to detect trends in what we're seeing nationwide so we can have a bigger, fuller picture of what's happening so that we can be prepared for when school starts up again in the fall.
Right. So you got 2 months, let's say June, July, August. What do you think is going to happen this summer with the encampments? What are you hearing? You said you have kind of surveillance going on, so.
Well, I think it's hard to make predictions, so I don't want to, disclose anything potentially confidential because I know a lot of us have been in touch with various administrations, which is not a secret. Obviously, the Jewish community is going to be in touch with administrations on this, but the outcome is obviously still unclear because the anti-Israel groups have certain demands, and we don't know what they're going to do either.
I think we're very broadly concerned about those demands that they're making, and we're concerned if the university will make any concessions to those demands. And I think to echo off what Lindsay said is something that we've been really clear about is that a lot of the time universities have the tool to get rid of these encampments and to also fight back against anti-Semitism on their campus and to punish those. They have their own codes of conduct, but they're not using them. That's something that we've always been advocating for, is for universities to use their literal own codes of conduct responsibly to ensure that Jewish students feel safer on their campuses.
Can I go back to something you said, Lindsay, is very interesting. So tell me what trends, if you can share, what have you noticed, a national pattern, if anything, about these encampments?
Well, we've noticed, obviously, similar language use. I think one thing we're questioning that we've yet to know is where all this funding is coming from. There's also questions about who is participating in these. Is it community-based? Are there people there that probably shouldn't be? This is, again, still a little fuzzy in the earlier stages than in America and evolving every day, but those are definitely some of the things that we are aware of.
So those are your questions. What are your conclusions so far?
It's really difficult to make conclusions at the rate that this is evolving.
Just to add to what Lindsay said about tracking the language, and that's a big concern for us, I think something that we've all been concerned about is the use of the term intifada on our campuses. The encampment at McMaster calls itself the student intifada. So when we're talking about what we would like to see from university administration, we would like to see them condemn the use of this language that has such detrimental connotations to the Jewish and Israeli communities. We know that over 1,000 Israelis died in the intifadas, and having that language on campus, we believe, crosses the line.
What's happening in BC, Miranda, with your gang? What do you hear in terms of encampments?
I have very much tried to avoid being there because it personally. So I know from pictures I've seen and from just being in the general vicinity, because our encampment is right in the middle of campus, right next to the main bus loop where all the students come in, and there have been drawings of paintings of people in keffiyehs wearing guns on their shoulders, and there've been tons of pretty violent connotations on these drawings and paintings that they've put up in the area. And it's what's truly saddening about it, for the BC at least, is that they are combined camps. So SFU does not have one on their main campus, but it seems that people are going to the UBC encampment and occupying some space there.
I think, Jacqueline, that's pretty much what I heard about Montreal. Is that right? That there's one location, but it's attracting people from other schools?
Yeah, the McGill encampment has students from Concordia, McGill, of course, and then also UDM, and even some Sherbrooke students, which is pretty far. In my opinion, I think this is because the McGill campus has a field at their downtown campus, whereas the Concordia campus downtown does not have a field, only for the campus at Loyola, and the same for the other schools.
All right, let's ask quickly about your experience going to Parliament Hill. 8:15 on Thursday morning. It's like an early class. What were they thinking?
We had to be there at 7:45.
Oh, my God. What was that experience like for you? And what results do you think it achieved?
I think it was really surreal because it was kind of like what I really always want CUJS to do, which is raise awareness about the experiences of Jewish students across campus. I think the response we got was a relatively positive one. We were bringing really to light the experiences that happen to Jews across the campus. You know, I go to Queens, but in both my speeches, I pointed out, and also in the subsequent questions, about what's happening to students at different campuses that don't receive a lot of media attention, such as Emily Carr in UBC or Dalhousie in Halifax. And so I think it really met its goal of raising awareness about Jewish students in terms of the press conference. And in terms of the committee, I think it is really an important start to advocating for legislation and also ensuring that the experience of Jews are present when having conversations with important people in our government. And so, for example, that's why we're also supporting students in creating and sending in briefs to the Justice Committee, because those are held at equal value as someone who's giving a oral testimony on the in person. So I think what's really important is that we're kind of really advocating for students' experiences to be heard outside of campus and into the public sphere, but also to the people who are doing a whole entire study on anti-Semitism, to make sure that we are able to say X experience happened to X amount of students. This is what shows that there's a real trend in anti-Semitism happening across the country.
Okay, so you're not taking statistics from various students and putting them all together yet, or when is that going to happen? Or that's not for
right
this.
now, our main focus for centralized information collection is the encampments, because it's very difficult to pull that together.
And what responses have you guys got? Going public like this opens you up to praise, but also targets you online. What pushback or hatred or anything have you received, as well as positive feedback?
I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from staff who've been very happy to come up when we're tabling. They're happy to come up and talk to us, and they're very proud of what we're doing, and they tell us that, like, for them, it makes them feel like proud that students are standing up for themselves and as well for them. And we've had a couple people in the past come up and have heated arguments with us and yelling at us, but recently it's mostly been, I think, people trying to provoke us in certain ways. They'll come by dressed in certain things. They'll just pace back and forth in front of us. Or a lot of stuff gets posted online, where we were tabling for Kristallnacht, and we saw that it was a student who followed us, so we found that they posted about us on the story that said, "Oh, don't talk to them. They're Zionists," all that kind of the normal things. So, boots on the ground. The Jewish students in BC are pretty shy, I've found, is that we're pretty few and far between, but when we come together, it's a good thing because these students are pretty low-key on campus and they don't outwardly come out and are fighting as heavily as in some universities across Canada.
Okay, it's really been great to meet you guys all. Thank you very, very much for sharing your stories with us on the CJN Daily. Wish you lots of luck.
Thank you.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily. It's produced by Zachary Judah Kaufman. Our executive producer is Michael Freeman, and our music is by Dov Beck-Levine. The Canadian Union of Jewish Students is holding its first formal elections on June 2nd. To learn more, go to the links in our show notes. We want to end by letting you hear some of what happened on Parliament Hill on Monday, when members of this Justice and Human Rights Committee of the House of Commons grilled the presidents of McGill, Concordia, UBC, and U of T. You'll hear Deputy Conservative Leader Melissa Landsman and also Liberal MP Anthony Housefather.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us at committee today. Do you believe that the university is adequately enforcing its code of conduct? Because I'll show you what's at the front of the encampment. That's a symbol that glorifies terrorism by Hamas, and I think you've probably seen this in the past. You've probably seen it in various places around campus, but that sits at the front of the encampment. Now, don't you think that the university's code of conduct would suggest that something like that is against the code of conduct?
Well, Madam Chair, in responding to the member's question, first of all, we have asked the student organizers of the encampment to remove signage and language which is offensive and they have complied on occasion, not in every instance. In other instances, we have reported hateful acts and hateful speech to Toronto Police Services. Something like 38 incidents have been reported as of the end of last week, half a dozen of which we believe may qualify as hate speech or hateful acts. And we are working closely with TPS to help them indeed investigate these incidents.
President Gertler, has there been any students that were suspended or expelled for any of these actions?
We have indeed had violations of our code of conduct, which have resulted in suspension and on occasion expulsion. And indeed, some of these have been related to recent actions and the protests around the conflict in the Middle East. So the answer is yes.
So is it related to the encampment specifically? When were these people suspended or expelled?
So the encampment has been in place for 3.5 weeks. And so we have not yet had
has
any...
been expelled or suspended because of the encampment?
Those processes are underway. So
but nobody has been suspended or expelled despite having graphics like this. They've just been asked to take them down.
Actions are underway, but it does take some time to follow due process so that whatever conclusions are reached and whatever sanctions are recommended have indeed proper purchase. So that is our goal.
Mr. Housefather.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for being here today. I cannot believe that in my lifetime we were having university presidents testifying before the parliamentary committee about anti-Semitism on campus. And President Carr, respectfully, I don't believe empathy should be the #1 goal. It should be protecting our kids and keeping our campuses safe of intimidation and harassment. That should be the #1 goal here. So I have some yes and no questions. I'd just like to ask everybody to say yes or no. If you can't answer yes or no, say I can't answer. Do you acknowledge anti-Semitism is a significant problem on your campus, President Saini?
Yes.
President Gertler?
Yes.
President Beckel?
Everywhere.
President Carr?
Yes.
Do you believe that DEI programs, all DEI programs on your campus must include the Jewish community, must include Jews? President Saini?
Yes.
President Gertler?
Yes.
President Beckel?
Indeed, yes.
President Carr?
Yes.
Y'all remember that joke from Airplane? The old lady asked for some light reading.
How about this leaflet, famous Jewish sports legends?
But in actuality, that's changing. Jews are crushing it in sports around the world, and we are here to celebrate them.
Sandy Koufax gets his 10th strikeout.
Zach Hyman, his first career hat trick. 41 points for Diddy Avdia. It's Sue Bird's building.
I'm Gabe.
And I'm Jamie.
We love Jews and we love sports, but most of all, we love kvelling over Jews in sports.
Together we host Menschwarmers, the longest running Jewish sports podcast in the world. Listen and subscribe at thecjn.ca and wherever you find your podcasts.